Is that in the first slide, or did you? Yeah, I don't know why. There's the first slide there.
we're going to have a test and an obstacle course later to make sure everybody can get over there. Welcome to the session on smart mobility. My name is Sam Bowles. I'm a board member for the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Before we begin, I've got a few quick announcements. First, we hope everybody has downloaded the app. We'll transmit some poll questions and other things through the app, and it's a great way to stay engaged with our speakers throughout the summit. We've also got a survey for the department on the app. We want feedback from everybody, all of the attendees, so if you can take a minute to take that survey prior to the end of the summit, we would certainly appreciate it. And then finally, at the end of the speech, I think we've agreed, Zoe's going to take a few questions from the audience, and Andrew and some other people will walk around with microphones. So be thinking about your questions. With that, I'll have to admit that I needed a little help with the definition of smart mobility before we began this session. Fortunately, I was able to learn that emerging technologies and increasing access to data are making our cities and road networks safer and more mobile. Examples of these technologies include everything like the drone that you saw yesterday, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and connected cars. We even have a local example. The city or the town of Cary is developing a program that allows commuters to automatically connect to important transportation data, which will make their commutes safer and, importantly, shorter. These technologies are changing quickly. There's a lot that we don't know, but the one thing that we do know is that they will have an impact on how we travel and on all of our transportation systems. Fortunately, we have with us today an expert on smart mobility. Zoe Eather is from the Queensland University of Technology, where she specializes in bringing smart city concepts to regions so that smaller communities can become more connected. She recently traveled around the world as part of the prestigious Churchill Fellowship, where she spent time in different countries studying this concept. So we're very fortunate to have her, and if she and I can navigate around each other on this small stage, I'll ask her to come up here now and make a presentation, which will follow with a workshop. Please join me in welcoming Zoe Eather.
Hi everyone. Oh, I have to stand here. That's right. First rule. My name is Zoe Eather and I am from Australia. I'm from a place called Toowoomba in Queensland. Fortunately, we aren't suffering with the fires up in my state, but definitely in New South Wales and Victoria, we have unprecedented bushfires. So we do think of Australia at this time. I'd like to first start with just explaining who I am and where I've come from. I started in road construction. I'm a civil engineer by background. And when I started in road construction, I was working in regional areas, in the outback, we like to say. I was working in places all across regional Australia and looking at flood damage road construction projects. I also was looking at water, environment and safety. This is one of my crews out in Tambo. Tambo is about 10 hours drive from the closest capital city and has 350 people in its population. When we were there, we increased the population by 10% because there was 40 of us, not for any other reason. This is one of the projects I was working on, and just to give some context, this is a major highway. Out into our regional areas in Australia. Then I thought, okay, I want to work on something big. So I worked on a 1.6 billion, that's Australian dollars, project in my hometown of Toowoomba. Now this was a 41 kilometre brand new stretch of road, and this is one of the very impressive viaducts. So just another photo of what this looks like. So I've worked on really small things and really big things. Now, as I was working on this project, I also got to hang out with some koalas. We were doing a full tracking program of our koalas. The first one they found, they called Zoe, which was very nice. Now, I was working on this big project, but I really wanted to work overseas. I really wanted to get some, international experience. And I thought I wouldn't be able to do this with the state government that I was working for at the time. But as soon as that thought entered my head, I got an email in my inbox. Our CEO had just gone to South Korea, and he was really excited about the technology. So he wanted to send one of his engineers over there. And so I applied for this, and thankfully, I got it. So I lived in South Korea for 3 months, and this is where I learnt about the concept smart city. Now, with a background in transportation, I saw so many efficiencies that we could gain just from a transport perspective. But then when I learnt more about this concept, I thought, actually, it's about the people. So this is an autonomous train in South Korea. It's not super new over there. This is one of the bridge projects that I was able to visit. It was terrifying, to say the least. Public transport, so real-time data. Their public transport network is absolutely incredible. And this is a product called CITS, so Cooperative Intelligent Transport Systems. This allows the cars to talk to each other and talk to the infrastructure. So this is a very pivotal moment. This was the first conference I went to on smart cities. So I left Korea to come back to Australia, and I thought, well, I can't go back to my old job. What am I going to do? Thankfully, I got a job in the CAVI project. We love acronyms. I don't know if you also love acronyms here. The Cooperative and Automated Vehicle Initiative. Now, there's an autonomous component of that, and of course we needed another acronym, so that project is called CHAD, Cooperative Highly Automated Driving. Now, this is the CHAD project. Now, the car itself, and I had nothing to do with this, but if anyone's asked, I definitely did. Her name is Zoe. There's 2 Zoes, and because we're not very creative, we used up all of our energy on CAVI and CHAD. We have Zoe 1 and Zoe 2. So this is a cooperative autonomous vehicle that we've been using for testing, and this is in partnership with the Queensland University of Technology. These are some of the projects, some of the on-site testing that we did. So we did Queensland's first plug test, where we tested 4 vendors against each other. So we would send a message from vendor A to the receiving end of vendor B and see whether that message actually got across. This is some of the other autonomous vehicle. We had some drones there as well, because who doesn't need a good drone? And then you can see this is the display. So it wasn't, this is all retrofit, so we could install it in any vehicle. Right now that project is continuing, and we have vehicles on the road with this technology. Not autonomous, so your driver still has to take control, but that connected, so cooperative ITS. So then when I was working on this project, I also got, this is our CEO, so I also got to shadow him for 3 months. And which was really exciting to be able to learn more about how it actually works up the very, very top. Now, when I was shadowing him, I came back to my project, and I was very excited, and it was a very interesting project to be working on. But what I wanted to do is more of that integration. So integration across the different disciplines, across different levels of government, across different levels of industries, which is where the smart city concept kept coming back to me. But I really need to learn more about it. So I started a podcast. Now, I had to leave my good, secure government job to start the podcast, but I thought it was really important. So I started the podcast. It was called the Smart City Podcast, which now it's called the Smart Community Podcast, because we need to start talking more about communities and less about the technology. So in the process, I also started a small consultancy called My Smart Community. So this is some of the stats from my podcast. So we've got 150 episodes, nearly 75,000 listens to date, and over 100 hours of interviews, and over 2,000 cities and over 100 countries around the world. So then last year, I also was on a delegation, the Future Leaders, Future Cities delegation to Japan. And this is where we learnt about what Japan is doing about the smart city space. Lots of advanced technology, and particularly in resilience, because they have a lot of earthquakes over there. So it's a really interesting project, delegation to be a part of. And then my current day job, I have the podcast as well as I do a lot of speaking, but I also have been project managing autonomous vehicle technology projects. So this is one of the projects that we have been doing, which is looking at how we can use LiDAR technology at intersections to bring that connected infrastructure piece before we actually have a bunch of these cars. Once we don't have that full penetration of connected vehicles on the road, we can actually start producing some of this data at our intersections right now. And I do a lot of speaking. And I am also participating in industry forums. So this is the Southeast Queensland City Deal. So this is our 3 levels of government getting together to talk about big projects, talk about big things in our region. This is the mayor of my town on the end there. Another ITS project speaking at, I speak in regional Australia. Regional cities are really important to me because we're talking a lot about this smart city approach in our big cities, but how do we make sure that we don't increase the divide for our rural and regional areas as well? And then earlier last year, or later last year, I should say, I was invited to be part of a Queensland government program for smart cities, the ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Leaders Program. So this was about bringing social enterprise and smart cities together. So this was our cohort. We had 5 Australians plus 1 person from each country in the ASEAN region, and we looked at smart city practices in Ho Chi Minh, Jakarta, and Singapore. So this leads to the Winston Churchill Fellowship. Now, the Winston Churchill Trust every year sends 100 Australians overseas to research certain projects. So these can be things from smart mobility to public toilets, from Brahman cattle to light rail infrastructure. There's lots of different, the world is your oyster on this. You put in an application, it's quite competitive. You have a 15-person interview, which is quite interesting as well. And you get to travel overseas and then you write a report at the end. So I travelled for 9 weeks to 9 different countries, and this is where I went. So I started off in Toowoomba, then I went to San Francisco, Mexico City, Toronto, Orlando, Denver, London, Dublin, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Cape Town, and then Seoul in South Korea. So what I found was that there's a common thread of issues. We're all talking about congestion. We're all talking about pollution. We're all talking about connectivity, both from a human perspective, a physical perspective, so roads, rail, infrastructure, and also a digital perspective. We're also talking about population growth. And then we're talking about the inefficiencies of public transport. So no matter where we are, from Amsterdam to Cape Town, these are the things we're talking about. And then we're talking about what is the future. So this is Carla, the self-driving car in the background here when I was in San Francisco. And the circle there is from a City Mapper app that when I was in Barcelona suggested that I catapult to my destination. That was a future option, not available right now. So what's missing from this conversation? So I think there's a conversation to be had around the messy bit in the middle. We've got the technology, we're all talking about that. Then we've got the business as usual of a city, a community, a region. So what's that messy bit in the middle that we need to talk about? So before we go into that, one really important thing is talking about baseline data, ensuring that we have data to actually be able to measure and monitor our actions, measure and monitor the impacts that we're having. So these 7 key areas are the things that we're not talking about enough. I'm going to go through them very briefly because we are going to move into a workshop where we'll talk about some of these things a little bit more. So first one is mobility as a system. Now we heard about transport as a service, which is also called mobility as a service, but actually we need the system to function first before we can actually pay for a subscription. So we need connected, accessible, safe, reliable, and an affordable network. So we already have a lot of government services. How can we better distribute them? And then we actually need a governance approach where somebody's looking after this stuff, away from business as usual and then integrating back into business as usual. So how do we set up that governance to actually have the right focus and energy and resources available to actually do this? Then we've got the status of mobility. So this is the baseline data I was talking about before. what is actually happening right now in our cities and regions? What does the mobility look like? Not just public transport, but we also have government subsidised services that are available. What do they actually look like? Do we have a map? Do we know what people are using and why they're actually using it? So the perceived and real gaps. And then we're able to then measure the impacts. Increasing convenient mobility. So this is about actually reducing the need to travel. So increasing remote working. The only way you can do this is having the systems and processes and the culture set up to actually do this, to support this. And it's about creating places for living. When I was in Barcelona, they have this thing called the super block, where in a 9-block radius, they've diverted the traffic and actually put children's playgrounds in the middle of intersections. You have to go 10 kilometres an hour within this block, so there's still cars, so people still have vehicles where they park underneath their buildings, but it's a people first priority, and so we have cycling, we have people walking around, that type of thing. So it's about creating places for living, and that's one example in Barcelona, but we don't have to take every piece from that, but we can take the pieces that we want and use those in our own communities. And this is about mixed use development, so having the affordable housing with the schools, the education, the health services, the entertainment venues, the restaurants, etc. And then regional mobility. So we want to create hubs and increase that connectivity. So how do we actually do that? By, with our traditional ways of thinking, we actually really need to rethink what public transport looks like and what that policy looks like for regional areas, because it won't look the same as what it does in the city. And if we're able to do that, we can potentially reduce our need for having our own private vehicle, but we can't do that without our focus on the regional areas. And who we're actually planning for, so mobility for whom. So changing the way we plan and who we actually plan for, because things are already changing. So the traditional network is set up for moving to and from work without any other stops along the way. We're not using the network like that anymore. People of all different abilities are using the network, and rightfully so. So how do we actually plan for that in the future? Well, right now and then in the future. Increasing accessibility, that's not just about physical accessibility, but about digital accessibility as well. People need to know how they can access the services. People need to know if they can book, how they can book, if they don't have a smartphone, what are the options. And then listening to the often unheard voices. And then holistic mobilities, this is thinking more holistically. It's not just about transport, it's about the whole of journey and people's whole of life, because mobility actually affects everybody. So we're sharing data across disciplines to address some of these challenges, and thinking of government services not as silos but as integrated. So as a customer, how do I have a streamlined experience accessing a service and not jumping from each individual government department? So this isn't just about transport, but the health, education, access to employment. And then finally, sustainable mobility. So looking at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, number 11, which is sustainable and communities and cities. And then we want to share learnings across the government, because we don't want to pilot the same thing over and over again. So sustainable is not just about the environment, it's also about being sustainable in our business models, making sure we're asking those questions. So then I developed the future proof, which is the final goal that we want. And let's be honest, it's not very different to what we've been thinking about in the past. We want strong leadership. We need smart governance. We want an accessible and sustainable network. We need to use data to drive our decision making. We have community co-creation in there and a regional approach and having that connectivity. But how do we actually get there? So this is when I developed the Way to Go framework. So we have smart community in the middle. We start with a vision. It's actually about solving problems. So it's not about getting the latest tech, it's actually about solving the problems that we have. So we look at those problems, we look at the data that's currently available, what data would we love to have, what data do we need to continue to measure and monitor, and then we make action, then we go around again. And then we have around the outside, the supporting mechanisms that need to support this. So we've got different heads, so that's both at the boardroom table and for engagement. And this is something I call digital diversity. I stole that term from a futurist, Andrew Grill, who I know very well. And what it means is we don't just have people that understand the policy and have experience, we also have people that understand the technology sitting at that table, because that's so important in this day and age. So we're talking about headspace, so that's about setting up that governance I spoke about earlier. For whom, again, asking the unheard voices. In the driver's seat, we need government in the driver's seat setting the rules of play. We definitely need private sector in there, but we need to set the rules of play because we want public good. Better than one, so we've got those strong partnerships, we can't do it alone. Wholesome, so that's thinking about it as a system, the whole life cycle of this approach. And then, of course, data time. So we always need to think about what data we have, including data literacy. How do we actually understand this data? And then moving on from that, what questions do we need to ask? This is just an excerpt from my report about some of the questions we need to start asking. We won't go through those because we'll actually start asking those in the workshop. So looking at my Churchill Fellowship and then the amount of people that I talked to on the podcast, I started to pick up these themes. So what is a smart community? We've got, we need to think about it as being human and diverse, livable and well. We need our citizens to be empowered and informed. We need to be resourceful and connected, accessible and inclusive, sustainable and circular, and integrated and open. So from the Churchill Fellowship plus these themes from the podcast, I've developed workshop cards, which have quotes from the podcast, because what's also really important is that we can have conversations about smart cities, smart communities, without actually leading with technology. So, without any more, this is moving to the workshop, but we will...
Do you want to go to the workshop or do you want to take questions?
We'll do some questions first.
Okay, we'll take questions from the audience. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand, and Andrew will walk around with a microphone.
Let me give you one here, sir.
I'll ask a question.
Here's a microphone. Should be on.
Yeah, you can stand up there.
Is it on?
I don't know.
Is it on?
Oh, yeah. Zoe,
Hello.
from your world tour, you gave the example of what they're doing in Barcelona. What are some other examples of smart mobility that you saw on your tour?
Yeah, so I talked a lot about governance. So one of the really key projects or mechanisms is in Dublin, in Ireland. So I have an office called Smart Dublin. And what that does is bring together the 4 kind of regional councils in that area. So they can bring forward their problems. Smart Dublin has a team dedicated to working out these problems for the different councils, and then they can share across those as well. So, for example, they can, if they've got, say, city council, like, oh, we need more, we want a city cycle scheme. So they can go to Smart Dublin, and rather than it just being in one council area, now they can spread it across that 4 government area. And so this was one of the problems that they had. And they had a reverse pitch approach. So rather than subscribing every single detail of what they wanted in that service, they said, hey, we've got this problem, and put it out to the startup community, because they have a very rich startup community there. A very deep startup community. A lot of the tech companies have their EU offices there due to low tax a long time ago. So they go to that community, and then also, rather than getting pitched by things that they don't need, they can actually get the things that they want at the same time. So I think that reverse pitch approach, I saw the same thing happening in Denver. It was actually a health conference or a night that I went to. It was called 10-10-10. And they had some agencies come together and say, these are the wicked problems that we have, because let's face it, we have wicked problems, and not one solution is going to solve it for everybody, but we can actually start working together. So anyway, when I was looking at this health impact, there was a guy talking about homelessness, and he was saying, well, yes, it's a health issue, but it's also an employment issue. It's also a transport issue. But this person would have to go to 4 to 5 different agencies to actually be able to solve any of these problems, when actually maybe they just need a ride so then they can actually get to work. But what are the mechanisms that we can put in place to make it really easy for people to be able to access that?
Interesting. Are there any other questions for Zoe before we start the workshop?
Just raise your hand.
Let's move over to the tables. Andrew or Zoe, do you want everybody just to pick a table, sit
Yes.
down? Doesn't matter where you sit.
Yeah, pick a table, sit down. There's some cards on the table, and then I'll explain what we're going to do next. Hopefully we have enough seats.
I'm not sure if these work.
Just,
I wonder.
yeah, you just,
I just turned them down. Oh, no, they were up. They were up. No, this is your volume. They were set like this.
Hey, how are you? Yes, sir. I'll be there.
Thumb drive. This might still on.
so it's in a fold or in the flash drive underneath there.
Should be the transportation center. Hey Zoe, is it the NC Transportation Summit?
Workshop cards.
Yeah.
So is it this one right here?
Yeah. So I just need.
You're going to be changing them?
Yeah. It's mainly if when people pick the card, then I'll bring it up on the screen.
Oh, okay. So you're going to
Yeah.
keep coming up here
I think so.
and leave the microphone here?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
So do you want to leave it like this and then you can scroll and click into it, or how would you like to go to the different cards?
I don't really think about it. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that'll be good like that.
Perfect.
Thank you. I might just go back.
Yeah, she switched it out.
Yeah, that's cool. Should we go?
Yeah, that mouse is.
Oh yeah. Just
This
if we put it on that pink one. Thank you.
So she's not going to do these in order.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah, I went through it. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I take that microphone over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
My pocket. Thank you. I've got some. I'm all good. Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you all found the seat. I was a bit worried, but I'm not very good at estimating. So, has everyone got a few different cards on their table? Yes? And some pens and some post-it notes. Yes? Okay, this is very easy. Don't worry. It's not super complicated. What I want to do is start just thinking about smart communities. So you've all got slightly different cards. Some are the same. But I want you to go through those cards and pick out 3 that really resonate with you. I have some more cards here if you don't have enough for your table, so just raise your hand if you need some more. But just have a look at the cards. They're in themes as well as quotes. So pick out 3 quotes that you think are really great, or you don't like them, you want to talk about them, because what we're going to do is we're going to come together and we're going to talk at least about one of those. I'll just see it for the time. So if we can do that for the next 10 minutes and pick out 3 of the cards, then we'll work through and just start writing some notes about them. So I'll give you 10 minutes, talk away amongst your groups and pick out 3 cards per group. Any questions? No? Okay, go for it.
We'll have to coordinate next time. Yeah. Sorry I missed the beginning.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you for that was fantastic.
Oh, good.
Zoe just had lunch with all the mayors. Oh, good.
How was the convo afterwards?
Good.
Yeah?
I mean, they ended up focusing on funding.
Yeah, which is...
I mean, I think it sounded good. I mean, our level.
Yeah, NC First Commission folks were there, so they ended up talking to them. And the secretary coming in really made it happen.
That's good.
How many mayors?
About
20 total. 20. But I'd say the city staff are about 100. Really? Yeah, pretty big number. And the MPOs are included. Sure. I've seen some of my MPOs. Did anybody from Charlotte come?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not
I mean, Julie's here.
Yeah, I was here.
Braxton's on the NC first, right?
She is. She is.
Can we take a photo together?
Yes. And then I guess Braxton Winston signed up.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. You know, he just switched committees.
I think he's on. I think he's new to the transportation.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, we should face that way to look like.
So,
to look
like
something
people?
visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go in the middle.
So he's a people.
Okay, I'm gonna go wander.
All right.
So what's the time? What time is it? Oh yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
It was successful, kind of.
It worked.
You know what they are.
It made the news in Charlotte.
Yeah, it was pretty
The
cool.
governor was on there. It was good. Yeah, I like
I was
it.
thinking I should have sneakily chucked it into my presentations now, but
First in flight.
That's right.
Did you know that about the Wright brothers, or did I remind you?
I only knew about it because I read it on people's number plates.
Oh,
The
right,
Western
First in Flight, okay.
But you reminded me because
Yes.
old mate said it.
Yes.
Old mate, the guy. But then because I looked it up.
I saw it on your LinkedIn
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that's cool.
Has anybody ever ridden in one of those? It's
No,
Well, I don't
not in
think
the
they
U.S.
They didn't get the license to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a fire truck there and an ambulance.
I
and
see it in
wasn't
the
even-
background. Yeah.
Wow.
This was the first time.
I know. I
That
did.
was-
They
But
actually
then the
said that.
secretary qualified. He says it's the first time that it was publicly done.
Yes.
And a demonstrate. I'm like, there are a lot of qualifiers there.
But it is.
But it's a dude. The guy, and I was like, why North Carolina? But
So cool.
Just means you couldn't get into Carolina.
Oh, what else did we do? Oh, we went to the bus. Oh, yeah, this is
I
me.
saw the first electric bus in Raleigh,
Yeah.
which they make in Greenville, South Carolina.
Really?
That's cool. Tell me that.
There was a company in Charlotte that did that. I don't know if it went bankrupt or why it got in trouble.
Oh, well, this company's headquartered.
Ex-general.
They're
So,
headquartered in California, but they're manufacturing in Greenville. They sponsored the mayor's meeting in December.
really?
March. So what are you up to these days? What are your passion around this stuff?
they asked me this.
Oh, no passion.
No,
I mean, I shouldn't say no passion, but it's not.
I didn't know anything about smarts. I mean, they could have easily asked me to do a different. I think I just kind of randomly assigned different board
Got it.
members to
Got it.
different sessions.
And what's your do you have a passion around your work with the DOT?
Well, I would say that for me, congestion and reducing. I mean, it's especially for our major metro areas.
You represent Charlotte on the board? Okay, so then that's
I mean, I'm Division 10, but it's
Okay, yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you know, I really would love to be able to get the legislature to consider more funding for mass transit, light rail,
We're gonna get there.
anything.
So here's my strategy. I'll tell you the Bo Mills strategy of this week. Push commuter rail. It's not light rail, but it's good enough. But it moves the conversation,
Yeah.
and I can get lobbying in our legislature. I can get support.
Really?
Yeah, I really believe it.
You know, so,
Because,
I mean,
because if you're in Gastonia, if you're in Winston-Salem, if you're in Asheville, if you're in Fayetteville, commuter rail is actually a possibility.
yeah.
And it's not a multi-billion-dollar, every project's not multi-billion.
Right.
Do it.
Some of the issue, I mean, you would know better than I would, but my assumption is that some of the issue is that the area, so take Gastonia or go north of Charlotte, even up to Statesville, yeah, Mooresville, great. But if you live in one of those towns, you drive into Charlotte every day, it is a parking lot, and even with the new toll lanes, it's pretty rough coming
And-
into town and getting out of town.
Have you, I mean, you probably lived in cities with rail, right?
Oh yeah,
And
other
I
than New York
did.
and Boston.
Yeah, same.
It's-
I could read.
right.
I know a friend who lived in West Virginia who took the rail into DC.
Yeah.
He billed his hours as an attorney.
Really?
Commuting. And it was legit.
I don't know why that's not an.
I mean, I go to Charlotte on the train.
Yeah.
I take the train from Raleigh to Charlotte, and I get a huge amount of work done.
I know, I get it. But it's
and
really
it-
like it
even if
really
it's an
would
extra half
reduce
hour.
congestion. I mean, we've got a couple of different lines. The one that goes up to the university is certainly good for that corridor. It's good for the university. The one that goes south has helped development in the south end. Whether or not that's really alleviated any congestion, I don't know. And so you really need one that goes from Charlotte south into Valentine and you know, even into South Carolina. You got to have one that goes north up to the lake.
Well, yeah,
and if you
Wardsville
did,
would work, right?
those would be perfect.
I think that's possible.
That would be perfect.
Now, the reason I want to go to Kingston is because of Governor Corbett.
I got it.
And I mean, his support is huge. He's been supported.
I mean, that is the next. What's his name? John Lewis can tell you more than I could. That's the next. That's like their number one. Yeah, I mean, they're building. I can't remember what they call it. This strange name for their lines. One's red, one's blue. This is the gold line or something.
Not the silver.
But
or
it's
something?
going from
Silver's
like
the
this
hill.
is going east-west from Mint Hill-ish over to Gastonia. I mean, Gastonia wants it. And so Gaston County and Belmont are both chipping in and saying that, you know, bring it across the river and
Not light rail.
I don't know, because I couldn't tell you the difference if I saw one, but it's some type of rail system that's
I
going.
promise you that the difference is hundreds of millions, if not maybe $1 billion,
Really?
between light rail and commuter rail.
So what's the?
So light rail is the electrified system. It's very unique system. Rail. Commuter rail uses the same rail that the freight system. So you're talking about existing lines already in place. Need a little upgrading. You need to build a platform. You can do a really cheap platform and start running commuter rail to Mooresville now.
Yeah.
I think I may be wrong.
Well, yeah, Norfolk Southern goes up there, and
Now
we have
there's
to-
the other challenge. Southern very difficult to work.
That's always been the excuse for why we don't have it. I mean, the real reason why is the legislature won't fund it, but that's been a lot of people's excuse for why.
But I mean, I could
up
take
there.
the Republican mayor of Mooresville, the legislature, and I bet we could.
They're all for it. The mayors are for it. I mean,
mean,
they're all on the MPO.
You know Miles Atkins, the mayor of Mooresville? Is that in your district?
Yeah, it is. It's part of Division 10.
If you ever want to go up there and meet with him, I'd be happy to do. He's
I'd be happy.
awesome.
I mean, what would be more helpful, for lack of a better term, would be to understand what we need to do. I mean, I'm happy to meet them, but if what's possible, what do we need to do to get the legislature to do it, and then whatever we need to, then so that we have something to talk to him about rather than just a concept of, hey, would you like light rail? Would you like commuter rail?
Yeah.
Would you like,
Yeah.
we don't know
That's
what we
right.
can get, but what way, and you would have a better idea
Yeah, that's
what
true.
the
That's a good point.
legislature and the DOT can support and what can get funded and that kind of stuff. I don't know that, and I've been on this board for several years now, and I still think I've got the funding formula down, but not
I don't
100%.
completely
So
understand that.
I think getting something like that figured out and then saying, hey, we've got a plan that would actually work here,
Well, here's my
because
other.
that would alleviate congestion, and that would be, and you'd get
And even if
CDOT
it
behind
doesn't,
it.
even if it doesn't actually make a huge difference in alleviating congestion, it gives people another choice,
Yeah.
and that relieves congestion in their mind.
That's right.
Too.
And it
You know, I'm
connects
tired of this.
Mooresville to Charlotte.
My
I mean,
wife
that's it.
drives from North Raleigh to RTP. It's 12-mile drive.
Yeah.
It takes her an hour.
Yeah, I know. We tried to go.
540.
I don't know why they turned their light rail or commuter, whatever it was, down.
Yeah.
But we went. This is a couple months ago. We were going to the Carolina game from a DOT meeting. We left this area right at 5 o'clock, maybe 5:05.
Oh gosh, well you were at the night.
Game started at 7. Got there with 4 minutes to go in the first half.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was unbearable for me.
Like
at least.
I-77.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse. I mean, it's terrible. Like 77, you got 85, you got 5. There's
Well, and the challenge going to Chapel Hill from Raleigh is there's really you don't have any choices. You've got one very course.
yeah, I mean, it was awful.
And of course, you're trying to get into the Smith Center, which is also a pain in the
It's also awful. Yeah, maybe if you told me we could either have great ingress and egress out of the Smith Center, or we could alleviate traffic in Charlotte.
It'd be a tough one for
Yeah,
you.
I might take the Smith Center. Coming from Charlotte, it's not nearly as bad,
No.
but coming from over here,
Oh my gosh, it's a nightmare.
can't get there.
You know, I worked for the university.
Hi team, if you haven't started already, you can start making some notes about each of the cards. Then in about probably 10-15 minutes we'll come together and then we'll start sharing, each of the groups will start sharing about the cards they want. So also, that they've chosen, also have a think about spokesperson or people for your group as well when we come together. Can you hear me back there? No. Just start making some notes about your cards. Can everyone hear me? Everyone's cool? Okay. So start making some notes and then we'll come together and share.
Not a collaborative guy.
Right. That's kind of what they said. And Randy said, I'm not naive. I don't think we're going to get 100% support on every issue, but I'm going to make sure that everybody knows about everything. We're going to try and build consensus, and then we're going to take a vote. And when we come out, nobody can say we didn't know about
Right,
stuff. We
exactly.
didn't,
That's the way you're supposed
let's
to
be transparent. And he was good. I mean, it was,
I'm glad to hear that. That's
Although-
really good to hear.
yeah, it was very encouraging. So,
That's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. And as a advocate for the Chapel Hill campus, Kevin is going to rock.
he's awesome. He really is awesome.
I mean, I hope
We're
he'll
lucky
stay
that-
there 8 years or more.
I think he'll be able to stay as long as he wants if we have the right board of governors.
Yeah.
He's
That's the question.
when my dad appointed Holden as chancellor.
Which is he was similar
He
to
thought,
Kevin.
my dad thought, and he'd say now he was wrong, but he thought Holden was going to be what Kevin was going to be. And now Holden got put in terror. I mean, the whole
Oh,
athletic
the
thing,
mix, yeah,
and he wasn't equipped to handle it.
But their origins are similar.
Right.
They are advocates.
Kevin's better social.
How is he?
Yeah, he's definitely better. I mean, Holden was
I didn't know
very,
Holden.
he was very
I
awkward.
came there before. I mean, I ran into him in some settings.
Very
Great
nice
musician,
person.
apparently.
Yeah, but very awkward.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was hard to have a conversation.
Oh, Kevin's fantastic
Yeah,
on his
he
feet.
is.
I mean, I was
He
working
is.
with Kevin when he was just a researcher
Yeah.
on TBI.
Yeah.
And I tried to do, we were going to do an event about his new helmets.
Yeah.
And they were using them at high school in Chapel Hill when his son was the quarterback.
Really?
And
I
we
didn't
were
know
all
that.
going to do this whole press thing, and then someone said, actually, from a research perspective, we might not want to follow it. Because there's, like, for research credibility, you can't have a personal connection to the subject. Because they were using the data from the helmet.
Interesting.
So we're like, maybe we'll just kill that. But it was really cool. His son was the quarterback.
That is pretty cool. Well, they said so when they named him, they knew that if they didn't make him permanent, that he could leave the next day and get a job with any NFL team anywhere in the country and get paid
frankly, at a
whatever he
university,
wanted.
frankly.
Yeah. And we had 3 internal candidates. He was one of them. He obviously got it.
Test one.
Yep. Okay, very good. Okay,
I think
so
we got the right guy no matter what.
Absolutely.
But
and we can.
nobody would come in and work for
It's
it.
going to
It's
be
kind of like the president.
time-consuming to zigzag, but we could see how the voices are, or just start here and go around. However you, I don't know. What do you think? This is your workshop. I'm just trying to be efficient.
Yeah, I can
We're kind of crowded in.
So Roper said he's going
If we're going to do the microphone, we probably should do it in order because it's going to be too much jumping
They're going to be able to get
around. Time wasting.
I've met with the search committee for the board of
I think we'll be okay.
It's going to be
You
tough.
want to give them a 2-minute warning? Oh, okay, we might. We'll see.
We can actually make it used to be the best job.
Hi team, everyone, can you hear me? I'll just get your attention for a couple of seconds. We're going to kick off our presentations in 2 minutes' time. So if everybody can get ready, we've got 2 more minutes, and then have a think about who you want to select or push or bully into actually talking. And then in 2 minutes, we'll come together and we'll start talking about which cards you've selected and why. Okay. Yeah, we'll have about 2 or 3 minutes per table, so we'll be brief.
Museums or more
First
square,
elected
more. Oh,
bus, and then I went to the drone.
yes, first
Passenger.
time in North
Yeah,
America,
which
so
is really
not
cool.
too shabby.
So normal tourist stuff, no. I might be able to.
I have a niece who lives in Augusta, Georgia.
Oh,
I'm from
cool.
Indiana, so she's in Augusta, Georgia. You go in there, and what other cities are you gonna hit?
Columbus, Ohio, and then like around that region, and then New York.
I've never been to New York City. You should.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, one of these.
Photos are. It's just a camera.
Okay. Has everyone got enough down and ready to present back to the group? No no's? Okay, who wants to go first is the biggest question of all. These guys here?
I have
Okay.
a microphone. You can try it or speak up loudly. Whatever you want to try the
So if you can we just get attention over here? We're starting with this group here. Do you have a team name?
Oh,
I didn't actually ask you to make one up, but I just thought I'd put you on the spot there.
we're gonna be first place today.
First place, okay.
First place. GSO.
If you can read out the quote and then what category it is in, that would be excellent. Okay, is everyone ready? Okay, over to you.
Okay, the first one was under resourceful and connected, and ours reads: the changes that we have are accelerating with the introduction of new technologies and the connectivity. People have access to much more information than they've had in the past, and that is changing the way that governments need to work. So really, we have mostly local government here, but then we have a legislator, and then we also have from the state government. So when we talked about it, we talked about how that may mean, talked about the citizens having a lot more information. So that may mean we might need to reevaluate our processes and our systems, the way we do it, and then also need to be more familiar with the information and data. Because usually, I think Brandon brought the point, usually when they would call us, we would have the data. They would have to depend on us for the data, but now they have information, so we need to have an understanding of what they're looking at so we can be clear and inform them. And then our second card we had was from Integrated and Open. Governments need to take into account the knowledge and passion of local champions and citizens, willing to support the development of smart cities and really recognize the value that this intelligence of the citizen brings into the process. We had a lot of discussion about this card in terms of citizen input. We know citizen input can vary. We're mostly from local government. And we talked about how it's important with that to build trust with the resident. And you have a lot of advocacy groups, as well as having good communication and building a dialogue with them, where they may understand sometimes the answer is not going to always be yes, but where we can have them be well informed, as well as sharing information with them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was everything. Thank you. I was trying to bring them up on the screen, but I couldn't do it quick enough, but I will try. Let's move on to the next table. Who wants to go next, or we can go around in a circle? We'll go around. You guys are up.
No pressure. He said a councilman.
Okay.
He asked a question in the general session, so he likes talking. You want to use the microphone?
So do I read each one? Do I read each one and then? Okay.
Yeah, just pick two. We'll go through pretty quickly. Yeah, choose two. Choose your favorite two.
Okay, so the first one is smart community is the nexus between sustainable development and technology coming together to enhance the quality of life, to protect the public, to improve government operations, and of course, protect natural resources and environment, and overall make our city a better place now and into the future. So I think our group basically just said that this speaks to just an expectation of the standard of what we want in our cities to attract people, and you know, in terms of just having a better future and our quality of life. I often joke that I wish we could shut Facebook off and Twitter off after 5 o'clock, especially being a political leader, because just we're not only trying to talk to the citizens, but we're always fighting just a few people in a neighborhood that might be really angry, that sound like a lot of people. So that's becoming more and more part of my job, which isn't fun, and it's not good for the citizens. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, anyone? Okay.
Yeah, that was by Chris Castro, right?
What?
Chris Castro was the guy that said that. He's the director of sustainability at City of Orlando.
Okay, great. Okay, and then the last one is, for me to trust you, I need to know you. I need to build this relationship with you. And the same thing with AI. For me to trust a certain algorithm, the algorithm needs to be more open and transparent and to explain what's going on. So we basically, as a group, decided that trust is a basic human need and that it's hard to overcome our control issues. Personally, I'm a relationship-based kind of person. I think many of us are. So we just miss the old days of just getting together and talking with a cup of coffee, over a cup of coffee, rather than just dealing with computers and data all the time. And then the fear of hackers, technology failing, and just a lack of privacy. And I'll end with a joke. I actually was talking with someone this morning, and they were wearing a beautiful blazer that I had bought a similar one, and I wanted to wear that blazer today, but the reason I couldn't is my mother watches me on Facebook. And if I wear a blazer, like if I do something like, if I wore that blazer again, she would call me again, you wore that blazer 2 days in a row, you can't do that. So, and I'm the kid that always the mother watched the most, and so it's just so annoying because I'm 48 and I feel like my mom's watching me every day. So anyway, but that's an example of privacy, right? We feel like someone's watching us all the time. I guess it's okay if it's your mom, though.
Maybe we can adjust your privacy settings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys want to go?
Okay, next group. Just choose your favorite two.
Oh, okay. So we chose from the empowered and informed. What we found was to make a smart city work, you need smart government, smart politics, and smart citizens, not necessarily in that order. What we took from that was, technology's out there, but government has to be able to understand and implement, or how to implement this technology. And the governments need to listen to their citizens, and sometimes that includes educating the populace and trusting your local government and trying, as a community, reaching towards a common goal.
Excellent.
And the second one was from the accessible and inclusive. A smart city is something that is inclusive for everyone, whether you're a retired senior citizen, someone who has just moved there 2 years ago, or a local business owner. A smart city solution has to be something that keeps you as part of the conversation. And what we took from that was it must be inclusive for all citizens. You have to get everyone engaged and to buy in. It's got to be solutions that people will actually use, that are reliable and safe, affordable, and mostly they got to be convenient to the citizens.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks, team. Okay, next group.
This table, anybody like to do it? Thank you for doing
Got fingers
Okay.
being pointed. Excellent. Okay.
I've been volunteered. So I'll read the first one. It's from Human and Diverse. If we don't have a knowledge economy, if we don't have really interesting and creative jobs for the human beings, we're going to run into big troubles because nobody wants to be treated like a robot and nobody wants to act like one, end quote. So some of the common themes we talked about were a lot of the issues we deal with in government and private sector are sort of the unpredictable nature in terms of behavior and our human response to those issues. There are a lot of qualitative issues that require more than just looking at the data. And then you can't discount the collective knowledge that when you work together and solve a problem, that can't be replicated in some sort of formula or with a non-human robot. The human factor to some issues, mentioned flexibility, education and awareness, and then the relationship end of business and government, developing those relationships over time to address complex problems. Second one is from resourceful and connected. Yes. A smart community is digitally connected to its infrastructure, citizens, and future. We felt like the communication real time in terms of how we deal with transportation issues and other problems in our society, that's becoming more readily available to those folks that make decisions as well as citizens. It's important in terms of a smart community and looking at the future. There has to be investment both from the public and private sector. We talked about public-private partnerships. You're seeing a lot of that in transportation as well as education, and then the access issue. There was discussion earlier about urban and rural areas. How do you get that access out to those underserved communities as well as rural areas?
Excellent.
Number
Thank
3.
You. Yeah, go on.
Hey, I'm done.
Go on. Okay. Thank you. I was going to say Daniel Fletcher is he worked in a regional he was the CEO of a regional local government, and so I really like this quote. I use it a lot, so thank you for choosing it. Next table.
Next table, the first cards we chose were accessible and inclusive, and we actually chose the same card that table over there, so I'll pick the other one that goes with it.
Okay.
Smart city is someone that is inclusive for everyone, whether you're a retired senior citizen. Oh, that was what you read. My bad. The other card was an inclusive and diverse community that includes multiple different players collaborating to make a better world. The idea is that it enables interactions between citizens and their governments with the purpose of improving the world and improving life. And what we talked about is, as we all get older and our driving skills may diminish a little bit for some of us, this technology will help us greatly in getting to where we need to go, which a lot of times is a lot of doctors' offices that you need to go to or different places like that. So with the advancement of this technology, that gives us all a way to get to where we need to go. And on a personal level, I'd like to say I'd love to see this happen. I have an adult daughter who has been in a wheelchair all her life. She cannot drive. So for me to imagine someone or an automated vehicle pulling up to her apartment, opening up, and she able to drive her car in there and take off to where she wants to go, that's just very cool in my opinion.
Yep.
So I'd like to see that happen, and I'll pass the mic on at this time.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, and I think it's definitely an important part of the conversation. So thank you.
I'm going to just go here and just keep going.
Yeah.
That way.
Cool.
I
Next
know you
table.
guys, we started with you.
Now, if anyone has a cool table name, feel free to shout it out when you get the microphone.
So you said a team name.
Yes.
We play by the rules, so we're the Smarty Pants.
Nice. Love it.
And I just want to say, while it's not acceptable to block your mother, sir.
Not listening.
While it's not acceptable to block your mother, it's perfectly acceptable to mute her. Okay, just so you know. She'll never know. It'll take her a while to figure it out. Okay, there are some of these cards that are obviously so superior that they've already been chosen. So I'm just going to read the last one of ours, which was, a smart city is reflective, it's responsive, and it's delightful to humans. It's about leveraging technology to make the city more human-centered and to make it more livable. For our table, it's that human component that makes life worth living. Why are we doing all of this if we're just going to sit in our little drone and never speak to anybody else, right? We've got to really think about the human component. The government should be a good listener and anticipate the needs of the community will. A smart city is reactive and it's responsive to those needs. What can we do? We need to be constantly thinking about what should we do to amplify our humanity and not minimize it. I know you engineers love humanity stuff, so we got to keep Got to keep reminding you. Using technology to be livable and human-centered. And I like this comment a lot, which was creating a new identity for our region. That's why everybody wants to come to North Carolina.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Someone from this table?
I was trying to find it. This one. Was it that?
Okay,
It wasn't
some
that
of
one.
ours have been already spoken on as well. So we have a bunch of engineers at our table.
Hi,
and
engineers.
So we went with sustainable and circular. So a
Okay.
smart community is not just about today, but it's also about tomorrow. If we go in for better technology today, have we thought about the end of life issues? And then we talked about the end of life issues, thinking about the autonomous vehicles, the technology that runs in them has an end of life at some point, and what do you do with it? What do you do with solar panels? They're not exactly something you can just go put in a landfill when they die. And those are things that we got to think about long term, that these may be great solutions up front and they may have a long life, but how do you transition that? And that's something that people aren't necessarily talking about on the front end.
Thank you. That's so true. And we actually had a conversation. That table hasn't gone yet. We'll see if they talk about it. If they don't, I will talk about it. Was that we think about end of life as not just of our devices and things, but also of ourselves. So.
That's our table, and we're not going to talk about that.
Okay, cool. Well, luckily I did.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
We talked about a lot. I think we could call our table the talkers or something.
The
'cause
talkers,
we had a good
excellent.
time. We didn't really pick one card, and since everybody's kind of done them anyway, I'll just tell you our notes about what we came up with, and they fit to the cards. But anyway, we talked about access and being connected, walkable, healthy, and what's that last one? I can't read it. And being human and safe, and access leading to equity and being a delightful and inclusive place, easy to get around and multi-generational. We talked about sustainability, protecting the public, the natural resources and environment and habitats. And then we talked a lot about trust, which might be the one you were talking about, and that's the open and integrated. And that is, the trust of this system and this idea. Some people, as we already said, some people are struggling with that as individuals, but also there's going to be public policy that goes with that.
Yep.
And there's going to be a lot of federal and state regulations that are going to be in the way of the future if we're not careful. And then we talked about trust being safety and just coming to terms with that. So we just mashed it up into that.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you so much. Where are we going next?
We're just. Sorry. You guys are next. You have to let me know who it is.
Okay.
Okay, we're another KCI Technologies table here, so we're pretty popular today. So integrated and open. Incidentally, what came out of this was enablers and government and engaged citizens. And it seems that the paradigm nowadays is that a lot of innovation at the government level is coming at state and local communities, cities, et cetera. So we think that's a key enabler and contributing factor, as well as consensus and engagement of the population. So I don't know if that's social media or what, but both have to be in it together. And our other card was empowered and informed, and that's kind of a big one because it could be a combination of crowdsourcing or metadata. But I think the example we kind of thought of was potholes, and how if people can report potholes seamlessly, the corrective work orders to repair them can be quicker. And if you have, let's say, if anyone's an asset manager, a criticality ranking of your streets, then you could prioritize those work orders to the more, the bigger arterials, et cetera. And it's sort of in the same vein as dynamic provisioning information. An example was, I guess, the parking, I don't want to go with the acronym, but the parking information systems where you have the red and green lights. And just how that can save time and money of people looking for spaces. The same thing could be applied to urban streets where there's public parking. So I think the common theme then is, let's see, we said open and sustainable, circular. Yeah, and then on sustainable and circular, I think the concern too was technology and the obsolescence concern. So I think part of the mitigants are common data standards, so that it's sort of plug and play. But to another point, it's getting the technology right the first time, like the old phone example.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. Are we clapping? Sometimes we do.
So we went through and a lot of the things that you've already said, but we're just going to break it down, make it pretty simple here. First, trust. We feel that this trust by the citizens, trust by the government, trust in all aspects. Transparency. When you look at these various things, we must be transparent in what we're doing and how we communicate, and also to how we integrate all of this together as you go through these. And last, and world peace.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Dave D'Angelo. I got selected to do this against my most profound wishes. So
Congratulations.
actually, both of our cards were already picked, so I'll just go through the basics. On sustainable and circular, a smart community being the nexus between sustainable development and technology, et cetera. We really felt that the balance between technology and the human environment was the key. Just like everything in nature, balance is the priority. So if we can figure out a way to bring in the technology and balance it with the human needs and the natural environment, I think we could be very successful in that. See what you're doing to me here? I got to hand it off and give it to you. So the other one is livable and well. Smart city is reflective, it's responsive, and it's delightful to its humans. Again, I think we chose this one again because it kind of comes back to the balance of the technology and the human needs. Not being a slave to the technology really gives it an enjoyable aspect to the people that are using it, and it helps the future development of that technology to be pointed in the right direction, not to be overly technical or a little bit underbalanced. So if the people are happy with it, it will continue to be developed to a point at which makes people happy and future generations happy.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now that's a couple of times that quote's been picked. Heath Rafferty is actually one of the local champions in Newcastle in New South Wales, which is being hit quite heavily at the moment with the fires. So he's a great guy, and I'm so glad that you guys love his quote because I also love that one too.
Zoe, it's 2:53. We have plenty of time left. We have this table and these last two. So
Okay, cool.
Make sure you guys kind of think
You
who
guys
you're
don't
going to
mind
pick out.
finishing early, do you?
This might be a two-person team here, but go ahead.
Okay, sure.
That is correct. It is a two-person team, and I believe our name is Sweet Jesus. So, so I won't go into how that name was derived, but nonetheless. So the first card that we have that we picked was from the pink category, accessible and inclusive. And this card has been discussed before, but just to go over it again, an inclusive and diverse community that includes multiple different players collaborating to make a better world. The idea is that it enables interactions between citizens and their governments with the purpose of improving the world and improving life. So the things that stuck out to us, it certainly does need to be all-inclusive and available for all. In enabling communication between all socioeconomic classes is important. And I think the benefit to that would be, sometimes the government and politicians can somewhat be out of touch with all classes, and improved communication would improve the quality of life for all.
Excellent.
Firstly, I would like to just say thank you to Zoe. It's a great exercise, and it's been really enjoyable just learning about everyone's thoughts on smart cities.
Thank you, fellow Aussie.
Yeah. And if you're interested in expanding your business to Australia, please come and talk to me. We chose the livable category. So the changes that we have are accelerating with the introduction of new technologies and the connectivity. People have access to much more information than they've had in the past, and that is changing the way the governments need to work. So we sort of came up with 3 ideas. The first is bridging the divide between the city and rural. The sharing of information enables the government to respond more quickly. Sharing of AI, provides more data and accuracy and information to respond to needs of the people, and allowing everyone to have a voice, which is important for inclusivity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You could pick somebody who has their notes. And Rusty, you want to try it?
Okay.
Just wing it. Just wing it.
Thanks, Andrew. Most of ours have already been spoken about.
Okay.
That we selected. The one we talked about, though, was the smart community, not just about today, but about tomorrow, and the
Yes.
data you choose, and the infrastructure you choose. And you know, there's a cautious step you take there on, you know, being good stewards of the money to pick a type of infrastructure that'll last a long amount of time and be usable for a certain amount of time. But then what do you do when it's not usable anymore? And so we had a big discussion on those items for it. The other part is it being seamless. We didn't really want to have to go to 18 different apps to figure out how to make the smart community work. And then, you know, and again, it's not all about transportation. You know, do you want it to, when it, like we said earlier, when the ambulance picks you up, does it take you to the hospital with the shortest wait time? How does it know that data, and how does it get that data and get you there quicker and not take you somewhere and then they have to send you to the next one because they're full? Parking spaces the same way. So that was, you know, some of the things we talked about when you choose it. And the last thing is the data that you provide is how much data should you provide to those places? How much data should you mine from those places to get what you need? I know a lot of cities are mining ways for their information, for their delays and things like that. How much do you need to give to them to make a viable type of system? So,
thank you so much for sharing.
that's what we had.
Last but not least.
So we chose the, we have several, I think everything's been covered, so I'm just going to go over one of them. But the way a space works can really benefit so many aspects of somebody's life. The interaction of the built and natural environments being vital to the health of an individual in the community. By using emerging technologies, we can help to build these places in the best way possible. And so in looking at that one, we kind of talked about that and really focused on, as we continue to build our communities and our infrastructure, and making sure that we're integrating and taking full advantage of those technologies. And also we had some discussion about, you know, how that affects, you know, peak congestion, curb space utilization, and then parking and other things that affect life, but that are still necessary and tangential. So,
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, final clap for everyone. Thank you for participating. I'll just share a few thoughts about, so one of the cards that came up a lot was Abel Imiraj. So he works for Queensland Urban Utilities, which is a water company. And he's all about water, but I also love his quote, so thank you for picking that one. Now this one here is Marissa Rakalamara. She's on the board of directors with me at the Australian Smart Communities Association. And this one, she's actually a criminologist by background. That's what she studied. So I found this quote very interesting because she was thinking at first from a crime perspective, how do we make sure that people are safe? But actually then thinking about it from smart cities perspective, we can actually use spaces to make people's lives better as well. So I know not everyone got to go through all of their cards. We do have a small amount of time. If anyone has any burning things that they'd like to say, just raise your hand. If not, we will go to some. You can ask me a question, or we can wrap up. It's really up to you guys. Anyone got anything burning they would like to add to the conversation? No? Okay. Well, I just have one last quote to finish on, and this is my quote. So start wherever you are and continue to ask questions, because it's both humbling and frightening to know that we're all suffering with this complex issue of mobility. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoe. We've all learned a lot. It's a great session. Thank you all for coming today. I'll remind everybody again about downloading the app and filling out the survey. Our next session starts at 3:30. It's on autonomous vehicles in the main ballroom. And for anybody who needs PE or PDH certifications, the table's right outside. Thanks again.
Perfect. Brilliant. That's it. I don't know if it's on or off, but I don't either. Excellent. We'll let the crowd gather out before you try to get everything back. I was asking about the tables for certification. It turns out they're right outside.
I had no clue.
I didn't know if they were manned or
You're bouncing around too quick.
I know.